Benya. I'm the host of Cure Daily Podcast. Our podcasts are designed to really share information from patients and experts regarding medical conditions that people can face in their lives. Our guest today, we're super excited to talk to him, Russell Winwood. I understand that you are actually here virtually from Australia. Is that right?
That's correct.
Oh,
Brisbane, Australia.
Brisbane, Australia. Okay, fantastic. Well, Russell is here to share his story on how he became known as the COPD athlete. So we're really excited to hear kind of how this came to be. So welcome.
Thank you very
As
much.
I Thanks, good. As I initially said in our intro, our company really is a healthy lifestyle company. So our goal is to really share stories and to show stories from people that have overcome medical illnesses or faced medical illnesses and still had a quality of life despite that. And your story really truly exemplifies what this is all about. So we are excited to talk to you. And we'd love to really hear your journey on how everything started and now, again, how you have become known as the COPD athlete. So, welcome. Let's get started, I guess, kind of at the very beginning. Probably the great place to start. Now, I understand you were actually diagnosed with asthma as a child. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think I was about the age of 10. And we'd been living at the part of Australia, and I hadn't had any problems with breathing or anything like that. And
Mm,
then we moved down to Sydney, which is more in the southern part,
mm,
where the winters can get cold, not snowing cold, but quite cold.
mhm,
And what I was finding is the change in temperature would make me become short of breath, wheezing, that sort of thing. So
mhm,
my mother took me off to the doctor to find out what was going on, and
mhm,
so I was diagnosed with asthma as a child,
mhm.
given a reliever inhaler and preventative inhaler,
Mhm.
and sent on my way basically.
Okay, great. And throughout your childhood, how severe was your asthma? Did you have a lot of attacks? Did it restrict your activity in any way at that time?
Initially, I did have quite a few attacks, especially while living in Sydney, and they predominantly happened in the winter,
Mm,
just a change of temperature, that sort of thing. But as a young kid, I can remember waking up, panicking, gasping for air, and of course, you're very disorientated, and you don't think, especially as a child, to grab for your rescue inhaler. So
mm,
my mother used to come rushing into the bedroom and calm me down and give me my inhaler,
mhm,
and everything was good. As I went through my teenage years, I was very active. We moved from Sydney to Brisbane, where I live now,
mhm.
a warmer climate. So I was fit, healthy, and my asthma, although it was there, wasn't a big part of my life.
Oh, great. So you were actually able to be fit and active as a teen without the asthma really getting in the way.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I still always carried around my
Mhm.
reliever inhaler. I remember I used to play football and had my inhaler down in my shorts. So even
Mhm.
on the field, if I got short of breath, which was very
Mhm.
rare, I always took precautions.
Mhm. And one of the good things to make a kind of note of is that asthma, and we'll talk a little bit about COPD versus asthma, but probably as you're aware, asthma was probably something you were born with, or at least kind of developed early on. It also obviously affects your breathing and your lung function, but often is not progressive and doesn't really have to be debilitating as long as you have the proper treatment and as long as you live a healthy lifestyle. So many people live with asthma their whole lives, use those inhalers, like you mentioned, and can do full activity, full function their whole lives. So, what changed with you? What happened with kind of the easy to manage asthma? And where did you go with your lung disease then in your 20s? Tell us a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, well, basically life happened to me as I went
Darn
through.
life.
As I went through my teenage years, I made a very stupid decision to start smoking in
Mhm.
my late teens, and I don't really know why. I think it
Mhm.
was more just to be, part of the crowd, one of the cool
Mhm.
kids, as you say.
Advertising and
Yeah,
right. Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we used to see ads on TV saying how cool it was to smoke
Mhm.
cigarettes.
Sure, sure.
And because I was so fit at the time, when I started smoking, it didn't really impact on my asthma. I didn't really notice.
Mhm.
So I guess, I just kept smoking. And as I moved into my 20s, I got married, I had children, and then, life takes over and, you're
Mhm.
busy, you've got a job, you're raising a family. And
Mhm.
it can get quite stressful, which it certainly did. So
Mhm.
I was smoking more. I guess as I sort of got into my late 20s, I was a heavy smoker.
And
Um,
how much were you smoking at that time?
oh, look, by memory, I think I was having about 30 cigarettes a day.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so quite a
Quite a
few.
bit. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I wasn't active anymore.
Mhm.
I stopped playing football sort of in my early 20s.
Mhm.
So I wasn't active. My diet was probably not the best.
Mhm.
Smoking as well. So although I didn't really think of it at the time, when I look back now, that was probably the start of my COPD, sort of in my
Mhm.
late 20s,
Mhm.
because I was getting more breathless. But I just thought, it's because of my asthma. I'm getting older. People
Yeah, out
get
of
older.
shape and mhm. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, from there, I guess the spiral started.
Mhm. And when were you actually diagnosed with COPD? When did you get that news?
Okay, so that was when I was, let me think now, 44, 45. So
Mhm.
2011. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Okay. And at the time, what was happening? Did you think that this, again, was still just your asthma, or did you realize at that time that things were getting a lot worse?
I guess it started when I was 36. My poor lifestyle actually resulted in me having a stroke, and I was off work for quite a bit of time, and that really, frightened me that at 36 I was in such poor condition.
Wow.
So from then I started looking at my lifestyle, things I could do, and
Mhm.
quitting smoking, eating a healthy diet, and exercise become part of my life. I was
Mhm.
fortunate at the time. My son was a cyclist, and he talked me into start cycling with him. So I started to turn my life around and become fit and healthy.
And that
And
was
then,
what age now that did you start cycling?
when I was 36,
36. And when did you actually have the stroke?
um,
How soon
36.
prior?
So yeah,
So that
so
right
yeah,
away.
yeah.
Mm,
So
that
it was actually Christmas Day, 2002. Uh,
oh,
yeah.
fantastic. So tell us a little bit about how did you know you had a stroke? What happened, Christmas Day? Did you have difficulty speaking or what happened?
No, what had happened, it was late in the day and it was hot, and I decided to go for a swim.
Mhm.
All I remember is I jumped in the pool, did a couple of laps, got out of the pool. I was drying myself off, and that was the last thing I remember.
Oh,
The next thing, I was waking up in a hospital. Um, I could see what was going on around me. I could hear people, but I couldn't respond. So I was
mhm.
paralysed, couldn't move. So that was quite scary.
Wow.
But for some unknown reason, I actually got back everything that I'd lost from the stroke
Oh,
within
okay.
about 3 months.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic. Did it take a lot of rehabilitation to
yeah,
get to this point?
yeah,
Okay.
it
So
did.
you actually
And
were debilitated at the time and you had to rehab it yourself.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And the biggest thing I know, or the most challenging part, was balance. I've
Mm,
had a lot of trouble balancing after a stroke.
mhm,
But as I say, I was very lucky.
mhm.
My doctor, who attended me in the stroke unit at our hospital, said to me he couldn't believe that I had no side effects when I went for the follow-up visit.
Wow.
The paramedics who attended me when I had a stroke actually come back and visited me in hospital later on, because they didn't
Mm.
believe I was going to live.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I was very lucky.
Yeah. So do you what residual effects did you have initially? So you said you could not speak. Did you have arm and leg movement difficulties as well? Like, did you have to learn to walk again and
Not that severe.
Mm,
More balance issues
okay, more
was the
balance.
issue. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was
Uh,
it at that time that the COPD diagnosis came into play as well? So you had the stroke and COPD?
no, it was, as I say, I sort of, after the stroke, I got my life back on track through
Mhm,
exercise and diet and quitting smoking. And what I've decided to do is start competing in triathlons. So
mm,
just small races,
mm,
and I did that for a number of years. I was still short of breath all the time,
mm,
but I sort of figured that was my asthma. So
mhm,
I just have a puff on my inhaler
mhm,
and away I'd go, sort of thing. We um, we decided to do I wanted to do an Ironman event, which is, I guess, the extreme of
mm,
triathlon.
mhm.
And
And for
I
those
went
of
down.
you who don't know what a, triathlon or an Ironman is, will you tell them what that is?
I'll try and convert it to the distances
Oh,
in
that's
miles. So,
mhm,
um, yeah, so the swim is 3.8 kilometers, which I believe is 2.4 mile.
mhm,
The cycle is 112 mile, and
mm,
then you finish with a marathon, 26.2 mile. So
mm.
yeah,
All
it's a
back
long.
to back to back.
Yeah, you don't have a break between them, that's for sure.
Wow,
So
amazing.
I'd gone down to watch some friends do at one of our local Ironman events, and I got hooked and decided that's what I was going to do.
Mhm,
So 2010, I started training. Um, yeah, 2010, I started training for the Ironman in
mm,
2011. But what I was finding is the more training I took on, so the more I'd load my body, I'd start to become sick, and that would be a chest infection, a lot of coughing,
mhm,
and short of breath all the time. So I'd stop, go to the doctor, get some antibiotics,
mhm,
get myself better, and then start training again. But
mm,
every time I increase the intensity of training, I just become sick.
mhm,
So that happened sort of all through 2010. Um, Coming into 2011, early in the year, I realised that I wasn't going to be able to do an Ironman because I'd become that sick, that
mhm,
breathless. So obviously, I pulled out of the event. Um, I thought myself I'd just stop training altogether and try and focus on my health and get myself better, which is what I did. But
mhm,
unfortunately, I didn't get any better. My
mhm,
health actually got worse as when I stopped exercising.
mhm,
It was late in 2011 that I sort of had enough and went off to my doctor. And I actually asked him if I could be referred to a respiratory specialist or a
mhm,
pulmonologist, I think they
mhm,
call them over there,
mhm,
which he did, but he actually thought it was just my asthma as well.
mhm,
So I said, I want to go and see a specialist. So yeah, late 2011, I went and saw a respiratory specialist and went through the spirometry and lung function testing, and was diagnosed with COPD.
mm. Wow. And what were your thoughts? Like, what happened that day that you were diagnosed? Like, what was going through your mind?
I'd never heard of it. I'd
Mm,
never heard of COPD. Didn't know anything about it.
mm,
When the doctor sort of sat down after and looking at the tests and telling me what was going on, telling me that my lung function was initially around 22%.
oh,
I thought, how could this happen?
did that
You
happen?
know,
Right,
uh,
right.
I was told that I would probably need a double lung transplant within 5 years,
Mm,
and the prognosis wasn't great.
mhm.
So yeah, I think when you're given with that news, depression really becomes part of your life because the
Sure.
outlook isn't that great.
Right. And for those of you who don't know what COPD is, we'll tell just kind of a brief summary. It's kind of a group of lung diseases called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And essentially, what happens is that kind of the lungs become thickened and damaged, and the tissue that helps oxygen exchange really gets destroyed. So you have a state where you have lack of oxygen coming into the body and then lack of carbon dioxide going out. And carbon dioxide is a waste product. So, in order for our bodies to function, we usually breathe in, and oxygen comes in the lung and goes into our tissues and our bloodstream. And then we breathe out, and then we breathe out this toxic gas, carbon dioxide. And with the damage to the lung tissues, that really is permanent damage, that exchange isn't able to take place. So that breathlessness that you were feeling is exactly that. You weren't getting enough oxygen in and not enough carbon dioxide out. And over time, this really is a progressive group of lung conditions. There is no cure right now, but there's definitely treatments, as you can attest to, and we'll talk about that in a second. It is preventable in many cases by not smoking, which again, often we make choices in our lives not knowing the consequences and not being educated on the consequences. And then you're faced with something like this that happens. So let's go back to the day of the diagnosis. Definitely a tough day for you, I'm sure. Now facing, you were what, 40? How old were you at that time?
45. Yeah.
45. Okay. And basically being told that um, double lung transplant in 5 years just in order to continue to live.
Mm. Yeah,
Wow.
that's right. And it's a lot to take in
Mm,
when you're given that news. And I guess the worst thing I did after the doctor's visit when I went home was I decided to search Dr. Google and to find
mhm.
out, you know, what COPD was.
Mhm,
And one of the problems with doing that, especially when you're in the mindset that life's not going to be good.
mhm,
I remember typing in life expectancy for COPD,
mhm, mm.
and that was probably the worst thing I did because back then there was not a lot of good news about.
Mhm,
I was considered a stage 4 COPD patient, which is very severe.
mhm,
So, I was reading things to say that, I wouldn't be here in 5 to 10 years' time. So
mhm,
that was quite daunting as well.
mhm,
And my wife, she was the same. She fell in the same trap as I did. We both got on Dr. Google. And
mhm,
I would recommend people who are newly diagnosed, if they are searching to learn about COPD, is type in a positive search criteria uh,
mm.
rather than a
That's a great
negative one.
point. That's a great point. And you bring up Google, fantastic for many resourcing, but often for medical, it's too difficult and too complicated from a health perspective to do a one size fits all. So often, when you're diagnosed with something or faced with something and you Google, there's so much generalization that it's really difficult to get a clear understanding of your specific disease. So we are, most of us in the medical and the beauty industry are anti Google for this reason. And good resources are really what you need. So either a good healthcare practitioner, we also have some very recommended websites that do have a lot of trusted information. Again, nothing will substitute from having an amazing physician or healthcare practitioner that you can trust that will sit down and give you your specific information. Because no two COPD cases are alike, anyhow. Even though it might develop similar, smoking, I think, in your instance, probably was the main culprit. Although having asthma as a child probably did lead you to perhaps get this a little bit sooner than maybe somebody else that didn't have that. But I think at the end of the day, the smoking aspect probably was kind of the main cause. So, Googling, sorry you did do it, but also I feel like there's lots of great resources that we can help anybody with facing any illnesses at all similar to this. But education is key. And it sounds like you quickly were able to get over the shock and then truly educate yourself on what to do next. So tell us what happened as you started to truly educate yourself. Then what did you do?
I remember my wife and I sat down one day and we said, right, enough is enough. We can't, you know, keep looking at things so negatively.
Mhm.
Um, as I say, I was only young, and I wanted to see my kids grow up. I wanted to see
Mhm.
grandkids.
Mhm.
So we sort of drew a line in the sand and said, right, no more. We're going to be positive, and we're going to try and fight this disease.
Mhm.
So I guess both of us had come from a sporting background, and we knew exercise was good. So that was probably the first thing that we started to do, is reintroduce exercise into my life.
Mhm.
However, that wasn't entirely easy at that stage
Mhm.
because I was so breathless.
Mhm.
My day pretty much consisted of, I'd wake up, my wife and I have our own business, so I would try to go to work, and I might last 2 or 3 hours at work, and then I'd come home and sleep for the rest of the day
Mm.
because I was exhausted. So,
Mhm.
to contemplate getting back into exercise was certainly
I'm
a
sure
struggle.
daunting, right?
Yeah. So my wife had to actually come across in our local paper a story about a Chinese herbal medicine doctor in our local area, and how he had had success with certain diseases. And I can't remember what they were. They weren't lung diseases, but
Mhm.
she decided, we should try something.
Mhm.
So I remember we went down to this doctor and visited him, and he examined me. And he said to me from the start, he said, I can't do anything about your lungs. He said, but I can give you more energy. And I thought, well, you know, I'm willing to try
Place to
anything.
start. Mhm.
Yeah, so I embarked on a course of Chinese herbal medicine,
Mhm.
which I used for about six months, I think it was.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you whether it was the Chinese medicine or whether it was the placebo effect, but I started having more energy. Um,
Mm. And
so
what was your regimen at the time? Were you getting acupuncture or herbs, teas?
just herbs.
Okay.
Herbs. I'd get some little tablets and mix up some herbs.
Mhm.
And I think that was a twice daily,
Mhm.
morning and night treatment
Mhm.
that I was doing. And as I say, I can't say whether that was responsible for me having
Mhm.
more energy, or whether it was
Mhm.
the mind over matter
Mhm.
type of thing.
Mhm.
But anyhow, it gave me more energy. So I started going out and walking. And then my walks would become every day. And
Mhm.
then I'd build up, and they'd be longer. And I
Mhm.
talk about this with my fellow patients about building your exercise capacity.
Mhm.
And that's what I was doing. So,
Mhm.
and what I found is the more I exercised, the better I felt. And
Mhm.
not only physically, but mentally, I felt like, hang on,
Mhm.
things might not be as bad as they seem.
Mhm.
And
Good.
I got to the stage where I was walking a lot and feeling a lot better. I thought I wouldn't mind trying to hop on a push bike again, and riding that.
Mhm.
And again, it was the same thing. I just start off with a short, slow ride, and then over time just build up my capacity.
Mhm.
So that was how I basically got back into exercise again.
Wow.
And
And were
without
you
that,
doing oh, and I'm
it,
sorry. Go ahead.
without that, I'm not sure I'd be in the same place that I am now.
Mm. Were you doing this in concert with a physician and getting any other treatments for your lungs, or was it really solely the Chinese medicine that you were turning to at that point?
It was a combination of Chinese medicine. Obviously, when I was diagnosed, I was prescribed inhalers,
Hmm.
preventative inhalers, which I was using.
Hmm.
Pulmonary rehabilitation back then in Australia wasn't um, easily accessible. There wasn't many classes, and I remember one stage there I rang up a number to try and get into classes, and I never had a phone call back.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, that was the system back then. It's
Hmm.
certainly a lot better now.
Hmm. And then what period of time would you say that it took you to actually go from that day of diagnosis to actually getting back on the bike again?
I think my memory is about 3 4 months.
Oh, good.
Um,
Oh,
yeah,
you made
so
fast progress.
I, I've
Mhm.
I've sort of always had that mindset. If you're going to do something, it's all or nothing.
Mhm.
I've never been
Good.
someone who just does things tentatively.
Mhm.
If I make up my mind I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it.
Great. So you were all in, took baby steps, started walking, 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 and then biking. At any point during those first few months, did you get discouraged or did you actually really start to see improvements and that just kept you going?
Yeah, it's more really started to see improvements, and
Mhm,
that was motivating me to do more and more. Probably there was times where I did more than I should have,
mhm,
and you'd be exhausted from doing that.
mhm,
And don't get me wrong, it wasn't though I went from diagnosis to out, running marathons in five
mhm,
minutes. It
mhm,
was it was a process, and what I would say to people is exercise is all about consistency. It's not something that you do every now and again. It's got to be
mhm,
part of your lifestyle, and it became part of my lifestyle. Every day
mhm,
I was doing something.
mhm. And you hit really on key elements, definitely every day and definitely all in. I think that often we are a bit of a quick fix society, I think, in general, everywhere. And when we see a goal or want to feel better or want to look better, often we just want it quickly. And sometimes that's not the answer. But if you focus fully, and do the things daily that it takes, then that road will lead you to where you need to go, which for you was eventually a triathlon or an Ironman, correct? Did you do a triathlon and then an Ironman, or where did this lead to then?
Well, this is what I was talking about. I'm sort of all or nothing type of guy.
Hmm.
I remember I got to the stage where I had been walking every day, been riding my bike, and I said to my wife I wanted to start swimming again,
Hmm.
and that was going to be a challenge.
Hmm.
I remember the first time I hopped into the swimming pool, tried to swim, I sank.
Oh.
I'm so,
Uh-oh. Not
that was
recommended to do by yourself, right? Make sure the first pool is with somebody there. Good.
exactly and one that you can touch bottom. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Um, So I knew of a device called a pool buoy, which is
Hmm.
a flotation device that you can place between your legs.
Hmm.
So I went out and bought one of those, and then I hopped in a pool that I could touch the bottom, and it was a lot
Hmm.
shorter. And I started using a pool buoy, and it was the best thing ever because it basically kept from my waist down afloat. So
Hmm.
all I had to do was move my arms to swim.
Great.
Now, initially, I was quite breathless doing that,
Mhm.
but over time, swimming become great therapy.
Mm.
To this day, I love swimming
Mm.
because it's one place you can get in the water and you can really control your breathing while
Mhm.
exercising. It's
Mhm.
not a pounding sort of like walking or running or
Correct.
cycling. It's a very controlled process, and
Mhm.
once you get your technique right, you can really just glide through the water, which
Mhm.
as I say, I love to do.
Mhm.
So anyhow, I'd reached this stage where I was now walking, I was cycling, and I was swimming without drowning.
Mhm.
So all good things.
Oh, very
And
good.
I said to my wife, I said, I think I want to do an Ironman. And she laughed. And she said, and I was pretty determined. So we went, she said, if you want to do an Ironman, let's go and see your doctor and see what he says about it.
Mhm.
So I remember going into my doctor's clinic. And I said to him that I wanted to do an Ironman. Well, I think he spent 10 minutes on the floor laughing.
Oh, no.
He said, he said to me, "You're not going to do any Ironman." He
Mhm.
said, "But," he said, "what I'll do, because you're enjoying the exercise," he says,
Mhm.
"I'll support you to do an Ironman training as
Mm.
long as you train by the parameters that I set for you."
Great.
So one thing that we discovered when I had my initial diagnosis through exercise stress testing
Mhm.
is that when my heart rate got over 150 beats per minute, my oxygen levels would drop
Okay.
dramatically.
So you had
So
that
what
information. Mhm.
so what he said to me was, "I'm happy for you to exercise." He said, "But you have to wear a heart rate monitor, and you
Mhm.
need to keep your heart rate under 150 beats
Mhm.
per minute at all times." So I said, "Okay, well, that's fair enough." So I went home and I entered an Ironman event in 2012.
Mm. How much in the future was it at that point? Was it like a year later or
Yeah, it's about a year.
a
Yeah.
year? Okay. So you basically from that point gave yourself 1 year and you entered the contest saying, "I'm gonna be ready in a year."
Well, I was hoping I was going to be
Yeah.
good.
Well, you're all or nothing, and I get it. I think that's so phenomenal. And again, such great fortitude and I think and dedication. What so much, what I want to bring up again is that your goal setting spot on. If you want to achieve something, you've got to really declare it at some point somehow, and then going through the right steps, pulling in those people that can support you to your goal, in this instance a physician, which is obviously super important for where you're going, but great. And I think the message always for people facing things like you have faced is that if you still have a dream or a goal and even the physicians laugh at you, doesn't matter. You still have to go for it. Do it safely like you did it. But no matter who believes in it or not, if you do and you're willing to do what it takes, then you've got to go for it. So, okay, good. So then tell us, how did you make it from that point to the year ahead? What did you do?
Did a lot of training.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, One thing that was a concern for me when I went back to before I was diagnosed is the fact that I was getting sick all the time. So I was very
Mm-hmm.
conscious of that.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing my doctor said to me, he said, if any stage you're getting sick, then that's it, no Ironman. I said, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So it was actually through a friend of mine who's used this product we have back here. It's a zinc powder. And she said to me, she said, you should take this. She says, I take it every day and I swear I don't get colds, I don't get infections, and it's an immune booster. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I still take that same product.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Do you know
found that
what's the ingredient in it?
I couldn't tell you
Oh, no
offhand, but it's
worries.
a combination of zinc powder,
That's
so zinc and vitamin C. So it's a
okay.
combination of
Immune. Okay. Good immune boosters. Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
So I took that and I started off training very slowly, um, and basically just built up my exercise capacity over that time. Um, Now, don't get me wrong, I was still getting very breathless.
Mhm.
And it's a problem some patients I hear about having problem with pulmonary rehab is they get so breathless, they get anxious, where's
Mhm.
my next breath coming from? Well, your next breath will come. Uh,
Mhm.
it always does. You
Mhm.
don't stop breathing. And
Mhm.
that was the hurdle I had to get over initially
And that's
is
a real and that can be, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but that can be a very mental hurdle as much as
yeah,
it is physical. And it's great that you pointed out is that when you can actually start to acknowledge what you're feeling and the fears, but then be able to control that thought mentally, that sounds like that's part of what you did to get you through, because you experienced that breathlessness just like any other COPD patient did. But you were able to actually acknowledge that despite the fears, as long as you continue to call on a breath, it will come.
mm, exactly. And it's about listening to your body. And,
Mhm.
as my disease or my life of COPD progressed, I have become very in tune with my body, and I
Mhm.
know what it's telling me. I know
Mhm.
when it says you need to rest, and I know when it says you can go out and exercise.
Mhm.
So I really paid attention to that in this whole training process up to my first Ironman.
Mm.
And fortunately, at no time did I get sick during that
Great.
program, which
Right.
to me, if you're asking me why, I think it's a combination of the inhalers I was taking
Mhm.
after I was diagnosed and the zinc powder that I
Mhm.
was taking. I
Good,
think they
good.
worked well in unison.
Mhm.
And, I was a lot healthier as far as my lifestyle as well. So, I
Mhm.
think those sort of things all played in quite well
Mhm.
together.
Mhm. And again, a good point. It's not one magic bullet that will
Mm.
keep you healthy. It's everything. It's, Western medicine with inhalers can be a supplement, nutrition, sleep, all of that together, which you have to do every day, kind of kept you going, which is great. Okay, so you kept training.
I kept training and things were going quite well. I
Mhm.
remember it was probably, I don't know, a month or so before the event. And at that stage, you start to taper your training down so
Mhm.
that your body recovers. So come race day, your body's relaxed and you haven't got any muscle soreness. So you can go into the
Mhm.
race quite fresh. And I thought to myself at that stage, I have no idea whether I'm going to be able to do this race or not. I've done a
Mm,
lot of training, but
mhm,
training is very different to race day. And
mhm,
I remember, waking up on race morning and standing out there, and you have to wear a wetsuit for the swim.
mhm,
So I put the wetsuit on, which, constricts you, and I'm standing
mhm.
there constricted, and I'm thinking, okay, now I've got to swim. It was quite daunting,
Yeah.
and I just set myself a goal as, all right, the first thing I want to do on race day is actually just finish the swim leg. If I
Mm,
finish the swim leg, I'll be happy with that. And then once I do that, then I can decide, what I'm going to do next. And I
good.
think to this day, that sort of attitude where I break things up rather than looking
Mhm.
at the whole thing is very helpful. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and again, it's super good point. If you look at, finishing the Ironman the same time that you're in a restrictive wetsuit and you've got hours ahead of you, you can psych yourself out, and at
mm,
that point you need as much self-support as you've got. So a great technique. Break it down into small chunks. Focus on what's doable, then hit the next target. What about the night before? Were you able to sleep at all? Were you scared? Were you
yeah,
excited? What?
I've done a lot of events since that first one, and
Mhm.
I never sleep the night before. It's,
No.
you're excited, you're nervous,
Mhm,
there's lots of things going on in your mind. So I always
mhm.
try and get my good sleep in 2 days before the race.
Good idea.
'Cause I know the eve before the race, you won't sleep.
Exactly. So
So
you're
yeah,
standing at the start line and then the gun goes off.
it
How
does.
Yeah, then what happened? You dove in and got started.
Yeah,
Yeah?
so the first rookie error I made is I dove in with everyone else. So
Mm.
if you can imagine, I think that particular race, there was somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 competitors,
Whoa.
and I
Mm,
jumped in. So the first thing that happened in probably the first 20 meters of the race, my head started going up and down. And that's
mm.
because the
Oh,
person in front of me was kicking
right.
and he was kicking my head up. So,
Oh, I didn't think about that. Right.
no, neither did I.
Yeah.
I don't do that these days.
Mhm,
So, I sort of, that made me stop, and
mhm,
I got very breathless because of what was going on.
mhm,
I basically just stopped and let everyone go past me, and then got into my rhythm and started swimming.
mhm,
And fortunately, I got through the swim leg. It took me an hour and 30 minutes roughly.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I got out of the water. I was quite disorientated when I got out of the water.
mhm,
I was quite breathless as well.
mhm,
So I just took my time to recompose myself. And once you finish the swim, you then go into a change tent where you put on your equipment for the next part of the race, which is the
mhm.
cycle leg. So I went in. Fortunately, I had assistance to get my wetsuit off because getting one of those off is not easy.
Yeah,
And
whether it's
I
COPD or not, it's not easy.
look, I get quite breathless putting my wetsuit on and off to this
Mhm,
day. So that was good. I just recomposed myself, put on my cycling gear, and thought, all right, the swim's done. Let's see if I can get the cycling part
mhm,
done. So I hopped on my bike
mhm,
and off I went on a 112-mile bike ride. Um,
mm,
which was quite daunting at the time.
mhm.
I was still in a very positive frame of mind,
Good.
but as you can imagine, that sort of distance is a long way, and
Mhm,
especially on the course we're at is quite hilly.
mm.
Hills and COPD are not a
Not
compatible.
at all. At
Mm.
any point during this race, did you actually feel like giving up, or did you feel like you weren't gonna make it?
Yeah. So I guess that happened a couple of times. So the first time was sort of getting towards the end of the cycle leg, and they have a vehicle coming around that picks up the competitors who are too slow, who aren't going
Mhm.
to make the cutoffs because each leg has a cutoff. And I
Oh.
remember the vehicle coming up alongside me, and he had a couple of people in the bus that they'd already picked up. And I looked at the guy and I said, "Are you about to take me off the course?"
Mm,
And he said, "That depends." He said, "Can you stay at this pace?" And I said, "Yeah, I can stay at this pace." And he said, "Well, if you stay at this pace you're doing now, you'll make the cutoff." So I thought, great. So after, I think it was 8 hours and 15 minutes on the bike, um, I actually pulled in and made the cutoff by about 10 minutes. So
Wow.
and that was a great relief because
Mhm,
I'd finished the swim leg, I'd finished the bike leg,
mhm.
and I remember going into the change tent to change into my running gear, and I sat on the chair in there and just put my head in my hands, and I just started crying,
Oh,
which is so
yeah.
weird.
Wa
But
was
it
it,
was it was
more happiness or more
it was emotion. It
emotion?
was just the emotion of the day. I was exhausted. I was
Mhm,
absolutely spent. You
mhm,
know, when you think I'd swum 2.4 mile, I'd
yeah,
ridden the bike 112 mile, and then I still had a marathon in front of me.
yeah.
Um, and I was thinking to myself in my mind, I was thinking, if I pulled out of this race now, you know, I can hang my hat on the fact that I've finished 2/3 of the race.
Mhm,
That's not bad for someone with, less than 30% lung function,
mhm, mhm.
and I could be happy with that. And then I remember I looked up and there was one of the officials sitting across from me, and he looked at me in his best Australian compassionate voice. He said to me, "What are you doing, mate?"
Mm.
I said, "What?"
Decision time.
Exactly. He said, "If you're going to continue, you need to get out and go." He said, "If you're not, then now's the time to make that decision."
Mhm,
So I thought to myself, I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to put on my running gear, and
mhm.
I'm going to go out and see what happens. At
Nice.
that stage, had it in my mind. I didn't think I was going to finish, but
Mm,
I thought I'm going to try.
great.
So off I went.
Mhm,
By that time, it was pretty much night time,
mm,
so it was dark. They give you a little fluorescent tube to tie to your race gear so people can see you coming,
mm,
and off I went. So the course I was at is you do loops. There's 4 laps to do,
mm,
and I had some family and friends down there supporting me, so that was good. But as the race went on, I guess I got into this mindset that I'm not going to finish. Sooner
mm,
or later, they're going to come and drag me off the course.
mhm.
I got about halfway through the final leg, the run leg, and my wife, my son, and a good friend of mine said, you can do this. We're going to put ourselves in different parts of the course, and we're going to tell you how long you've got to reach every one of us. So again, goal setting
Wow.
and small goals to get me through
What support,
the,
right? Mhm,
the run leg. Yeah,
mhm.
it wasn't till it was about a mile and a half before the finishing line. It wasn't until I got to that point that I actually thought to myself, I could I could maybe finish this because
Oh,
you
you
get
did
17 hours.
25 miles and wow, that's amazing. And
You,
and
you
still you're thinking, I don't know if I'm gonna finish."
no, that's
Mhm,
right. And I
mm,
remember seeing, so you get 17 hours to do an Ironman. That's the cutoff,
mm,
and that's not negotiable. If you're over 17 hours, that's it. Your race is done.
gotcha.
So I remember on the final lap, um, you go through one part of the course where you can see the finishing line and the time clock. And I looked at it and thought, hang on, if I keep up with this pace, I might just be able to finish this race. And that sort of gave me renewed motivation.
Wow.
So, as I say, you get 17 hours to do an Ironman. I
Mhm.
crossed the finishing line in 16 hours and 50 minutes. So
That's
I made it in 10
amazing. Wow.
minutes.
So
So,
not only did you finish it, but you actually finished it under the guidelines that they would have pulled you
yeah,
off on.
yeah,
That's amazing. How, like, I can't even imagine how that felt. The accomplishment is just truly amazing. Again, for someone with no lung disease, completely healthy, it's amazing. But what you faced, um, again, I don't think any one of us, unless we're in your shoes, could truly understand the struggle that you had with every single stroke or step or cycle that you had. So much of what you've said along your journey of the race is really the lessons that I think that we all need to look at in the journey of our life. And when you're faced with health issues like you are, um, you you set goals, lofty or not, set them for the moon, and only you know what you want and what it's going to take. Even if people laugh at you, you still do it. You do small chunks, and you surround yourself with people that are going to help you towards your goals. And I think that your story it's just phenomenal. I mean, I've been doing medicine for 19 years, and I can't imagine a single one of my clients that have COPD that could have accomplished this. Now, knowing that you're such an inspiration for people, both with COPD and with illnesses in general. And before we do wrap up, I even have to remind people you also overcame a stroke. So it wasn't just you had COPD; you actually had a stroke, had to recover from that, then living with COPD. So again, over and over, it's amazing what you've been able to accomplish. Tell us briefly, and I know we do have to wrap up. I'm getting the hurry. What does your future look like? Tell us a little bit now about what's ahead of you, both for your lungs and your life.
Yeah, my future is very bright. I've just turned 53 last week.
Great.
So
You've got half your life left.
I've got half my life left. That's it.
Mhm.
I'm actually competing in another Ironman event this year in June.
Great.
Um, it'll be my last one. I've
Um,
done three now,
Oh,
so this
just
will
three.
be my fourth.
Wow.
But I use these events to raise money for different organisations. So
Mm,
in the past, I've done the New York Marathon, Boston Marathon,
mm,
London Marathons, and those races are fundraisers for, American Lung Association,
mm,
COPD, British Lung Foundation, and also our own Australian Lung Foundation,
mm,
which the race I'm doing in June, that's what it's for. So for
mm,
me, my life is very much about raising awareness for COPD,
mm,
raising money for research and programs for COPD in different countries.
mm,
I think one point I took out of that first Ironman event was it really changed the way I thought about my disease because I was always getting told you can't, you can't, you can't,
mhm,
and then all of a sudden I can. So
mhm,
finishing an Ironman event made me realise, I can do so much more.
mm,
I have a caption on my website that says, "Never let your disease define you," and I
mm.
think it's absolutely right. And
Yeah.
it's up to a particular patient to decide how their future is going to unfold, and it doesn't always have to be a death sentence.
Mhm,
COPD, you can live well with this disease.
mm,
You've just got to have the right mindset, have the right tools, and be very positive.
mhm,
For me, I will continue to set goals, and they will be in events.
mhm,
I'm also working a lot now with researchers as far as nutrition and
mm.
how nutrition plays a role in managing my disease. So
Great.
that is becoming quite a big part of my life.
Mhm. And apart from raising money, raising awareness, the other piece is you really are an inspiration. And I hope people take away from this that, and again, you summed it up, your disease doesn't define you. There are many instances where we face diseases that aren't our fault, whether they are or not. We then make that decision that very day, and every day after that, what are you going to do? Are you going to still participate in life or not? And I think that being able to live life fully, no matter what you're afflicted with, is just such a gift. We're so excited to be able to talk to you today. I know you have a website that has more information, right? So if you want to find out more about Russell Winwood and what you're doing, it's copdathlete.com. Is that right? Okay,
That's right. Yeah.
fantastic. I really encourage everybody to go to your website to follow your accomplishments. Any way we can support you, we're behind you 1000%. I'm just so really just in awe and honored to be able to meet you and talk to you today. And I look forward to, I'm going to check in with you every few months to see how things are going. After your next Ironman, I want you back on and let me know what the next goals are for you.
Look, I'd be more than happy to come back on. I mean, I've already got my goals lined up for 2020, which one of them will be a visit to the United States.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic. Southern California, Malibu. You gotta come.
I'll make sure I sit
Oh,
down there.
we would
But
love
it'd
to.
be great to catch up.
Yes, definitely. And again, we thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's early in the morning there, so thank you. We'll definitely keep in touch, okay? And thanks again so
Wonderful.
much. Okay,
Yeah,
bye
thanks
now.
for having me. See
Thank you.
you.
Bye. Thank you for joining our podcast today. If you'd like to get more information about how to live your healthiest life every day, please go to curedaily.com.